The observation gallery hummed with quiet conversation. Students from 17 different worlds pressed against the transparent barrier, their various eyes fixed on the biodome below. Some had multiple sets of eyes. Others saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. But all of them watched the three figures moving in the chamber with the same expression. Their species used for concern. Una stood at the back of the gallery, her arms crossed. She was human, but she had never lived on Earth. Her parents had left during the early colony missions, and she grew up on a station with aliens. She spoke 5 languages, and none of them were Korean. Still, when she looked at the 3 humans below, something in her chest felt tight. Beside her, Taiho shifted his weight. It was also human, also raised off-world. They were the only 2 humans in the entire Galactic Concordance Academy until today. "They look so small," whispered a Veltraxian student. Its body was covered in thick, armored plates that could withstand extreme temperatures. How did they even survive long enough to build spacecraft? Una didn't answer. She had heard variations of this question for years. The galaxy had made first contact with humanity 6 months ago, and the judgment was immediate. Humans were weak, soft skin that tore easily. No claws, no venom, no natural weapons at all. They needed a very specific mix of oxygen and nitrogen to breathe. Too hot, and they died. Too cold, and they died. Their planet's gravity was heavier than standard. Yet they had no reinforced skeletal structure like species from similar worlds dot in the biodome. The 3 humans were being introduced to their new environment. Dion was the tallest, with short dark hair and eyes that never stopped moving. He had been a soldier on Earth. Hana was smaller, with her hair pulled back in a practical style. She had worked in Earth's oceans, studying life in the deep water. Jinwoo wore simple clothes and carried a small bag. He was a doctor. The academy director, Velmuth, floated beside the observation window. Its crystalline body refracted light in strange patterns. The Integration Studies program is beginning. These humans have volunteered to help us understand their species. We will observe their responses to standard environmental challenges. Standard for who? Taiho muttered, but only Una heard him. Velmoth continued. Our preliminary biological scans show that humans are remarkably fragile. They have only one heart. Their bones are calcium-based and can break under stress. They have no redundant organs. If their single brain is damaged, they die. They cannot regenerate lost limbs. They have a very narrow temperature tolerance. The students made various sounds of pity. One of them, a being made of flowing liquid held together by a membrane, actually rippled with sadness. We will begin with a mild challenge, Velmoth said. A simple temperature adjustment. Nothing that would harm our students, so it should be safe for basic observation of human stress responses. In the biodome, the temperature began to drop. The monitoring system showed it decreasing from the standard 23 degrees Celsius to 18 degrees. For most species in the academy, this was barely noticeable. Some species lived in environments that ranged from freezing to boiling within the same day. The students leaned forward, waiting for the humans to panic, waiting for them to call for help. Equal parts fear and pity colored their attention. Fear that these primitive beings might actually die from such a small change. Pity that evolution had been so cruel to them. Doyun stopped walking. He tilted his head slightly, then said something to the other 2 in a language the translators were still learning. Korean, the database said. One of several hundred human languages. Hana nodded. She went to their supply area and pulled out some fabric items. Jackets, the computer labeled them. Primitive thermal regulation tools. They carry backup temperature regulation equipment, one student observed. How did they know they would need it? They didn't, Una said softly. They just prepared for the possibility. The students found this confusing. Why prepare for something that might not happen? It seemed wasteful, paranoid even. Jinwoo was examining the biodome's environmental controls. He couldn't access them, but he was studying how they worked, making notes on a small device. "What is he doing?" asked the Veltraxian student. "Learning the system," Taiho answered. "In case it fails." "Why would it fail?" "This is a concordance facility. Our systems have redundancies." Taiho just shrugged, but Yuna saw the look on his face. She had seen it before, in mirrors. It was the look of someone who had learned to think like the aliens, but still remembered thinking like a human. It was the look of someone caught between two worlds. The temperature stabilized at 18 degrees. The humans put on their jackets and continued their work. They were setting up their living area, organizing supplies, and mapping the biodome's layout. They didn't seem distressed at all. Velmoth made a sound like crystals chiming. Interesting. Increasing the challenge parameters. The oxygen level in the biodome began to fluctuate. Not dangerously, the monitors assured. Just enough to create mild stress. From 21% down to 19%, then back up. Any concordant species would notice this, but it wouldn't impair them significantly. The humans noticed immediately. Doyen's hand went to his chest. Hannah took several deep breaths, testing. Jinwoo pulled out a medical device and checked their blood oxygen levels. "They're monitoring their own biological responses," Velmoth observed. Sophisticated for a species so newly spacefaring. What happened next surprised everyone. The humans didn't wait for the challenge to pass. They didn't call for help. Instead, they adapted their behavior. They moved more slowly to conserve oxygen. They sat down more frequently. Jinwoo established a rotation where they took turns resting while others worked. They were managing their energy like it was a limited resource, because for them, Yuna realized, it always had been. "They're treating this like a survival situation," she said aloud. The other students turned to look at her. "What else would it be?" asked the Veltraxian. Yuna gestured at the comfortable biodome with its safety systems and monitoring equipment. "This is an academy, a learning environment. But they're acting like they're stranded somewhere dangerous. Is that not wise?" asked another student, a floating organism with no solid form. "To prepare for the worst?" "It's very human," Taiho said quietly. The observation continued for hours. Velmoth introduced more variables. The gravity increased slightly, 1.1 times standard, well within safe parameters. The lighting changed to simulate day and night cycles faster than Earth's rotation. The humidity dropped. Each time, the students expected to see fear. Expected to see these fragile creatures struggle and suffer. Each time they felt pity welling up inside them. How terrible, they thought, to be so poorly designed for survival. How sad that these beings had to work so hard just to exist in conditions that others barely noticed. But the humans didn't struggle. They adjusted. They adapted. They helped each other. When Hannah felt dizzy from the oxygen fluctuation, Doim was there immediately, helping her sit down. When Jinwoo's calculations got harder in the lower light, Hana rigged up a reflective surface to direct more illumination to his workspace. They worked together like parts of a single organism. Like a hive mind, but voluntary. Cooperative by choice rather than genetic programming. "I don't understand," the Veltraxian student said. "They should be suffering. The data says these conditions should cause significant stress." Yuna looked at the readouts. Heart rates elevated but steady. Stress hormones present but not spiking. Cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. The chemicals of alertness and readiness. "They are stressed," she said. "They're just used to it." That was when the fear in the observation gallery began to change. It was still fear, yes, but no longer fear for the humans. It was becoming something else. something the students didn't quite have words for yet. Below, in the biodome, Doyun looked up at the observation window. He couldn't see through it from his side. It was one-way transparent. But somehow, he looked directly at where Yuna was standing. And he smiled, thought. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what was happening. Someone who understood that they were being tested and had decided that tests were just another form of challenge. And challenges, Yuna was beginning to remember, were what humans were made for. The students watched through the glass, equal parts fear and pity. But the ratio was starting to shift. The second day of observation brought more students to the gallery. Word had spread through the academy that the humans were doing something unexpected. They were surviving, yes, but more than that. They were thriving. Velmuth increased the difficulty of the challenges. The academy believed was still being cautious, still operating well within safe parameters based on their biological scans. But the director had underestimated what safe meant for a species from Earth. The first major test came in the form of a predator simulation. The biodome released a robotic creature designed to mimic a hunting animal. It was programmed to be non-lethal, using only sensors and soft impacts. For most species, the proper response was to use their natural defenses: armor, venom, speed, camouflage, whatever evolution had given them. Humans had none of these things. The students pressed against the glass, genuinely afraid now. Some wanted to stop the test. This seemed cruel. Like watching someone fight with no weapons. Thought the robot predator was about the size of a large earth dog, the database said. It moved on 6 legs and had sensor arrays that tracked movement and heat. It entered the biodome from a side panel and immediately locked onto Doyan, who was closest. Doyan saw it. His body language changed in an instant. The casual, relaxed posture disappeared. His shoulders dropped slightly. His knees bent. His weight shifted to the balls of his feet. He became very, very still. He's frozen in fear, one student said. But Yuna saw something different. She had seen predators before. Lots of them on different worlds. And she recognized what Doyan was doing. He wasn't frozen. He was waiting, calculating, watching. The robot charged. Fast, faster than a human could run. The students gasped. Doyan moved. Not away, toward it. At the last second, he stepped aside, and the robot missed him by centimeters. As it passed, Doyan grabbed something from his belt. A tool. A simple wrench from the supply kit. The robot turned for another attack. This time, Doyan didn't dodge. He timed his movement perfectly and brought the wrench down hard on one of the robot's sensor arrays. Sparks flew. The robot stumbled, confused. He's fighting it, breathed the Veltraxian student. But he has no natural weapons. He made one, Taiho said. Doyan didn't stop. He moved around the damaged robot, staying out of range of its limbs, and struck again. And again. Each hit was precise, calculated. He wasn't trying to destroy the entire machine. He was finding its weaknesses. The joints, the sensors, the power coupling visible through the maintenance panel. Within 2 minutes, the robot was disabled, lying on the ground with its legs twitching uselessly. Doyan stood over it, breathing hard. Then he crouched down and started examining its internal structure, taking it apart, learning how it worked. Why is he doing that? Asked the student. So he knows how to fight the next one, Yuna answered. Her voice was quiet, almost proud. The observation gallery was silent for a long moment. Then Velma spoke. Fascinating. The human didn't rely on physical advantages. He used tools, strategy, and learning, increasing complexity. The next challenge was resource scarcity. The biodome's food supplies were reduced to below the recommended amount. Not starvation levels, but enough to create stress. Most species would ration carefully and wait for resupply. Hannah had a different approach. She began a systematic survey of the entire biodome. Every plant, every water source, every corner. She was looking for something. "What is she doing?" Valmoth asked. Jinwoo answered over the communication link they had established. His voice was calm. Hannah worked in Earth's oceans. She's a biologist. She's looking for additional food sources. There are no additional food sources, Valmoth said. The biodome contains only the supplied rations and decorative plants that are not nutritious for humans. Hannah apparently disagreed. Over the next 3 hours, she identified 17 different substances in the biodome that could be consumed safely. Some were parts of the decorative plants that, while not intended as food, were technically edible. Some were algae growing in the water recycling system. Some were mineral deposits that could supplement their diet. She didn't just find food. She created a whole system. A rotation for harvesting that wouldn't deplete the sources. A preparation method that made the food more digestible. A storage system to preserve it. The students watched in amazement. The Concordance's own biologists hadn't identified half of these potential resources. They had designed the biodome and never realized what it could provide. "She's seeing possibilities we didn't," Valmoth said. There was something new in the director's voice. Not pity, respect maybe. Or concern that the environmental challenges continued to escalate. Temperature swings. Pressure changes. Humidity extremes. Isolation periods where the 3 humans were separated into different sections of the biodome. Each challenge revealed something new about human capability. Jinwoo, isolated and alone, didn't panic. Instead, he used salvage components from the disabled robot and parts of the environmental monitoring system to build a communication device. It took him 6 hours, but he successfully created a way to talk to Doyeon and Hannah through the biodome's metal walls. When Valmoth discovered this, the director was silent for a full minute. Then the crystalline being said, he built functional technology from scrap components. Without instructions, without proper tools. Humans are very good at making do with what they have, Taiho said. He was taking notes now, documenting everything. This was becoming less like an observation and more like a case study in human adaptability. Yuna was tracking something else. She had noticed a pattern. Every time a challenge was introduced, the humans went through the same process. First, they assessed the situation calmly. Second, they looked for immediate threats. Third, they identified resources. Fourth, they made a plan. Fifth, they executed the plan while remaining ready to adapt if it failed. They never panicked. They never froze. They just worked the problem. It was methodology, strategy, a framework for survival that seemed built into how they thought. They're always expecting things to go wrong. Yuna said to Taiho. Paranoid, suggested the Veltraxian student. Who was listening? Prepared, Taiho corrected. There's a difference. The biggest revelation came during the combined stress test. Valmoth introduced multiple challenges simultaneously. Low oxygen, high temperature, a second predator robot, resource scarcity, equipment failures. The students expected chaos, expected to see the humans overwhelmed. Finally, they thought, these fragile beings would reach their limit. Doyeon, Hannah, and Jinwoo met in the center of the biodome. They talked for exactly 90 seconds. Then they split up, each taking a different task. Doyeon handled the predator robot, using the knowledge from the first one. Hannah managed the resource gathering under the new constraints. Jinwoo worked on fixing the equipment failures while monitoring everyone's health. They moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. Smooth, efficient, trusting each other completely. How are they doing this? Asked a student. Multiple life-threatening situations at once, and they're just managing it? Yuna pulled up Earth's file in the database. She had looked at it before, but now she read it differently. Natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, floods, droughts, temperature extremes, predators at every level of the ecosystem, diseases, parasites, venomous creatures, toxic plants. Earth wasn't a planet. It was a gauntlet, a testing ground, a forge, and humans were what came out of that forge. They're not doing anything special, Yuna said slowly. This is just normal for them. Managing multiple threats, adapting on the fly, trusting their team. This is how they live. The observation gallery had filled with students throughout the day. Now, there were over 100 beings watching the three humans navigate challenge after challenge. The mood had shifted completely. No one was whispering anymore about how weak humans looked. No one was expressing pity for their soft skin and fragile bodies. Instead, there was a different kind of fear growing. A dawning realization. If humans could do all this without genetic modification, without cybernetic enhancement, without any of the advantages the Concordance took for granted, what were they capable of with those advantages? Velma finally called an end to the day's testing. The challenges powered down. The biodome returned to neutral settings. Down below, Doan, Hana, and Jinwoo didn't celebrate. They didn't congratulate each other. They just went back to their tasks. Improving their shelter, checking supplies, maintaining their equipment, planning for tomorrow. Because tomorrow would bring new challenges. It always did. That was just life. In the observation gallery, the students filed out slowly. They talked in hushed voices about what they had seen. The fear and pity were still there, but they had transformed. The fear was no longer for the human safety. It was a deeper fear. A fear of potential. And the pity was gone entirely, replaced by something the students were reluctant to name. It felt almost like envy. These humans, with their fragile bodies and their narrow environmental tolerances, had something the rest of the galaxy didn't. They had the absolute, unshakable will to survive. No matter what. Yuna stayed at the window long after the others left, watching the three humans prepare for sleep. They set a watch rotation. Even here, in a safe academy biodome, they didn't all sleep at once. On the third day, Velmoth called an emergency assembly of all advanced xenobiology students. Yuna and Taiho were required to attend. They entered the lecture hall to find the director's crystalline form dimmed, which in its species indicated serious concern. I am sharing classified information, Velmoth began without preamble. The Concordance Council has designated Earth as a Class 12 death world. This designation is the highest in our records. It means the planet is extraordinarily hostile to life. The room erupted in shocked sounds. Different species made different noises, but the meaning was universal. Disbelief. That's impossible, said the Veltraxian student. We've observed Earth. It has cities, agriculture, billions of humans living there. A death world can't support that kind of population. Velmoth's form pulsed. Earth is the only inhabited Class 12 world ever discovered. Before humanity, every survey team we sent to a Class 12 planet died. The record was 47 minutes. Silence fell over the hall. Let me show you why Earth received this classification, Velmoth said. The holographic display activated, showing Earth from space. It looked beautiful. Blue and white, with green and brown continents. Peaceful. Yuna felt that tightness in her chest again. She had never seen Earth except in pictures. First, the atmosphere, Velmoth continued. Earth's air is 21% oxygen, This is an extremely corrosive gas. It reacts with almost everything. Metals rust in Earth's atmosphere. The human body itself is slowly damaged by oxygen, which is why they have extensive cellular repair mechanisms that work constantly. The students looked at each other. Oxygen was necessary for many species, but Earth concentration was unusually high. The atmosphere also contains nitrogen, water vapor, carbon dioxide, and trace gases. But here's what makes it deadly. The oxygen percentage is just below combustion levels. Earth's atmosphere can support runaway fires. The entire planet is one lightning strike away from widespread burning. Images appeared on the display. Massive fires consuming forests. Walls of flame taller than buildings. And yet, humans call these wildfires and consider them natural. Some of their plants have evolved to require fire to reproduce, Velmoth said. More images. Taiho gripped the edge of his seat. He had never seen this side of Earth. His parents had told him stories, but seeing it was different. Second, the gravity. Earth's gravity is 1.4 times concordance standard. Every movement humans make requires more energy. Their bones must be denser. Their muscles stronger. Just standing upright is a constant effort. That explains their physical capabilities, murmured a student. Third, radiation. Earth's star emits dangerous levels of ultraviolet radiation. Humans have evolved dark pigmentation in some populations to protect against it, but exposure still damages their DNA. They have repair enzymes that fix this damage constantly. Without this repair, they would develop fatal cellular mutations. The display showed the sun. Yellow, bright, deadly. Fourth, the weather. Velmoth's voice took on a tone that might have been awe. Earth has cyclonic storms with winds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. These storms can level entire cities. The planet has freezing precipitation. Water that falls from the sky as solid ice. Electrical storms with lightning that can vaporize organic tissue. Temperature variations that swing 50 degrees in a single day. Videos played. Tornadoes tearing apart structures. Hurricanes drowning coastlines. Lightning splitting trees in half. Snow burying vehicles. Humans build their homes in areas where these events occur regularly. They call them seasons and consider them normal. A student raised a tentacle. How do they survive this? They build shelters. They developed prediction systems. They created warning networks. They simply endure, Velmoth answered. Fifth, geological instability. Earth's crust is broken into massive plates that move constantly. This causes earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis. Mountains rise and fall over time. The ground itself is unstable. More footage. Cities shaking apart. Volcanoes erupting. Waves taller than buildings. Humans build on this unstable ground anyway. They have learned to construct buildings that flex with the earthquakes. They live next to active volcanoes. They return to areas destroyed by tsunamis and rebuild. Yuno is starting to understand something. Something about the way humans thought. About why Diane, Hana, and Jinwoo approached every situation like a survival scenario. Because on Earth, everything was a survival scenario. Sixth, the ecosystem. Earth is filled with predators. At every size. Microscopic organisms that cause disease. Insects that carry plague. Reptiles with venom that can kill in minutes. Large mammals that can tear a human apart. Marine creatures with enough poison to kill dozens of humans. Plants that are toxic to touch. Fungi that digest flesh. The display showed a parade of horrors. Sharks, bears, snakes, spiders, bacteria, viruses, parasites. And yet humans are the dominant species. Not because they outcompeted these threats with superior biology, but because they outthought them. They became persistence hunters. Velmoth paused, letting that sink in. Does anyone know what persistence hunting is? Taiho raised his hand slowly. It's when a predator follows prey until the prey dies of exhaustion. Correct. It is one of the rarest hunting strategies in the galaxy because it requires enormous energy expenditure. Most predators evolve to be faster or stronger than their prey. Humans evolved to be more stubborn. The display showed ancient humans running for hours, following animal tracks, never stopping. The prey animal would run, rest, run again. The humans just kept coming, walking when necessary, running when possible, until the animal literally couldn't move anymore. A human can run for days if necessary. They have cooling systems that most species lack. Sweat glands. They can regulate their body temperature while moving, something most predators cannot do. They have efficient bipedal locomotion that conserves energy. And they have something else. Something that might be their most dangerous adaptation. Velmoth's form brightened, focusing attention. They simply refuse to stop. Mentally, psychologically, humans have developed what they call determination. Stubbornness. Well, once they decide to do something, they will continue attempting it far beyond the point where any rational being would quit. They are psychologically incapable of accepting defeat easily. The students sat in stunned silence. Seventh, and finally, the planet itself actively tries to kill them in ways both large and small. The planetary tilt creates extreme seasonal variations. Ocean currents can change, altering climate patterns. Ice ages occur. Mass extinction events have happened multiple times in Earth's history. The planet has been struck by asteroids, buried in ice, cooked by volcanic activity. Life has nearly ended several times. And humans evolved during all of this? Asked a student weakly. Humans evolved because of all of this, Velmoth corrected. Every challenge eliminated the weak. Every disaster selected for adaptability. Every threat forced innovation. Earth didn't make humans comfortable. It made them survivors. Yuna thought about Diane's smile through the observation glass. The smile of someone who knew they were being tested. Now she understood that smile differently. For humans, everything was a test. Life itself was a test. And they had been taking that test for millions of years. I'm showing you this because you need to understand what we're observing in the biodome. Those three humans aren't performing exceptionally for their species. They're average. This is standard human baseline capability. The room erupted in questions. If they're average, what are their best like? Are all 8 billion of them like this? What happens when they have access to our technology? Velmoth dimmed again, the light fading to almost nothing. Those are the questions the council is asking. And they don't have answers yet. The director brought up new images. Human history. Achievements. In less than 10,000 years, humans went from simple tools to spaceflight. They survived ice ages with nothing but fire and animal skins. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They split the atom. They mapped their own genome. They built computers. They created art that moved the soul. They wrote music. They fell in love. They raised children in the most hostile environment in the known galaxy and told those children that the world was beautiful. This is what a death world creates, Velmoth said quietly. Not just survivors, but beings who look at horror and see beauty, who face death and create life, who are given every reason to give up and instead reach for the stars. Taio's hand was shaking. He looked at Yuna, and she saw tears in his eyes. We came from that, he whispered. Our parents survived that, left that, and still called it home. The assembly ended, but no one moved immediately. They were all processing, rethinking everything they knew. Finally, the Voltraxian student spoke. In the biodome, The challenges we've been giving them. Those aren't hard for them at all, are they? No, Yuna said. She stood up, feeling something shift inside her. Pride, maybe. Understanding. For them, this is easy. This is vacation. Because they're not on Earth anymore. The students filed out slowly, heading back to the observation gallery. But they weren't going to observe anymore. Not really. They were going to witness. To learn. To understand what it meant to be human. Back in the biodome, the three humans were unaware of the assembly. Unaware of the classification. Unaware that the entire academy now knew. The Concordance Council made their decision 3 days after Velma's presentation. Despite the director's concerns, they voted to accelerate human integration. The potential benefits, they argued, outweighed the risks. If humans could be properly socialized into concordance culture, their unique capabilities could be valuable for exploration, defense, and scientific advancement. Velma disagreed strongly, but the council's word was final. Doyan, Hannah, and Jinwoo would be released from the biodome and integrated into the general student population. Yuna and Taiho were assigned as their liaisons, responsible for helping them navigate academy life and helping other students understand humans. The first day of integration was uncomfortable for everyone. The cafeteria fell silent when the 5 humans entered together. Hundreds of eyes, in dozens of configurations, tracked their movement. The 3 newcomers seemed unbothered by the attention. They collected food, found an empty table, and sat down to eat. Normal behavior, but everything about them made other species nervous. Humans made eye contact when talking. For 14 different species in the cafeteria, direct eye contact was a threat display. The humans didn't know this yet. They were just being friendly. Humans smiled, showing their teeth. For most species, bared teeth meant aggression. The humans were just expressing happiness. But students backed away from those smiles anyway. Humans spoke casually about dangerous topics. At one table, Jinwoo was explaining human medicine to a curious student, describing surgeries and injuries in matter-of-fact terms that made 3 nearby students feel faint. Humans saw violence and mortality as normal topics of conversation. To them, these weren't disturbing subjects. They were just facts of life. Yuna watched all of this with a strange mix of embarrassment and defensiveness. She had spent years learning to be less human in her mannerisms. Now she was remembering why. Humans didn't fit easily into the Concordance's social structures. But slowly, carefully, some students began to approach. Curiosity overcame fear. Questions were asked. Conversations started. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Corvi was a Veltraxian student who had been struggling with the Academy's survival training courses for 2 semesters. His species had thick armor and could survive extreme temperatures, but the training scenarios were designed to challenge students beyond their natural advantages. Corvi kept failing the tactical thinking portions. He would panic, freeze, or make poor decisions under pressure. After watching Doyan in the biodome, Corvi had become fascinated. How could someone so physically vulnerable remain so calm under threat? How could someone with no natural defenses make such effective tactical decisions? Finally, he approached Doyan in the training facility. Excuse me, human Doyan, I watched your trials. I saw how you defeated the Predator robots. Would you teach me? Doyan looked up from the equipment he was examining. He didn't smile, probably having learned that smiles made people nervous. Teach you what specifically? How to think like you do. How to stay calm. How to make plans when everything is dangerous. Doyan considered this. Okay, show me what you're struggling with. Corvi led him to a training simulation. It was a standard scenario. Navigate through an unstable environment, avoid hazards, reach the objective. Corvi entered the simulation and immediately did what he always did. He relied on his armor and charged forward, trying to power through the obstacles. He failed within 3 minutes, trapped in a situation where no amount of armor would help. Dayan watched the replay. Then he asked a simple question. What were you trying to do? Complete the objective. No, I mean, what was your strategy? Your plan? Corvi looked confused. Move forward, survive, reach the goal. That's not a plan. That's just a direction. Dayan pulled up the simulation's map. Before you start, ask yourself questions. What can go wrong? Where are the dangerous areas? What happens if I can't go forward? Where are the alternate routes? What resources do I have? What can I use if my primary approach fails? But I can't know what will go wrong until it happens. Exactly. So assume everything will go wrong. Plan for it. Corvi's armored plate shifted, his species' expression of confusion. Everything? But statistically, most things will work correctly. On Earth, we have a saying, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Dayan started marking up the map. Look, this bridge looks stable. But what if it isn't? There's a gap you could fall through. What if the supports are weak? What if it collapses? So before you step on it, you identify another route. You test it first. You move carefully. You're ready to jump back. That seems paranoid. Maybe, but you'll notice I'm not the one failing the simulation. It was blunt, almost rude. But Corvi's armor plates shifted again, this time in what might have been appreciation. Show me more. Over the next 2 hours, Dayan taught Corvi a completely different way of thinking. Don't ask, can I survive this? Ask, how am I going to survive this? Don't assume things will work. Verify. Don't rely on your strengths alone. Identify your weaknesses and compensate for them. Don't just have a plan. Have backup plans for the backup plans. When Corvi ran the simulation again, he moved differently, slower, more careful, testing each step, watching for threats. And when something did go wrong, when a platform collapsed unexpectedly, he didn't panic. He had already identified an alternate route. He adapted and continued. He passed the simulation for the first time. Word spread quickly after that. If a human could teach Corvi to think tactically, maybe they could help others. Students started approaching the humans with questions, problems, requests for help. Hannah started a study group that met 3 times a week. She taught cross-species biology, but her real contribution was teaching students to think systematically. Break big problems into smaller ones. Test your assumptions. Document everything. Prepare for failure. Have redundant systems. Students from peaceful worlds, species that had evolved in stable environments, found this approach revolutionary. They had never needed to think this way. Their planets didn't try to kill them. But the Academy's advanced courses required exactly this kind of thinking, and most students struggled with it. Hannah made it make sense. She showed them that it wasn't about being paranoid. It was about being thorough. It was about respecting the fact that things could go wrong and being ready. When they did, Jinwoo's contribution was different. His medical training on Earth had taught him to understand stress responses, pain management, and how different species' bodies reacted to pressure. The Academy had excellent doctors, but they specialized. Jinwoo thought holistically. He saw patterns other doctors missed because he was trained to expect complex, interconnected problems. A Floric student came to him with symptoms that had baffled the medical center for weeks. Fatigue, cognitive issues, metabolic irregularities. 3 different specialists had examined her and found nothing conclusive. Jinwoo spent an hour asking questions that seemed unrelated. About sleep, about diet, about social stress, about lighting in her living quarters. about her exercise routine. Then he asked about her home planet's day-night cycle. It was 32 hours long. The academy used a standard 26-hour cycle. The student had been living on the wrong circadian rhythm for 2 years, and her body was slowly breaking down from the chronic stress. The solution was simple. Adjust her schedule to match her natural rhythm. Within 2 weeks, all her symptoms resolved. How did you know? She asked him. On Earth, we have to think about everything. All the small things that could cause problems. Because if we ignore them, they compound. They get worse. So we learn to look for root causes, not just symptoms. The study group expanded. The medical consultations increased. Doyen's tactical training sessions became regular classes. The humans were changing how students thought. They were teaching a death world mindset to beings from safer worlds, and it worked. Test scores improved. Simulation pass rates increased. Students who had struggled for semesters suddenly understood concepts that had eluded them. But not everyone was happy about this. Some faculty members expressed concern. Students were becoming more cautious, more suspicious, more likely to question assumptions. This was good for practical skills, but challenging for traditional teaching methods. Some professors found their students now demanded proof rather than accepting statements on authority. Parents complained that their children had changed, were less trusting, more worried. Came home from the academy talking about disaster, preparedness, and backup plans for everyday activities. Volmuth summarized it in a faculty meeting. We invited humans to join the concordance. But they're not just joining. They're changing it. Once you learn to think like a human, you can't unlearn it. You see threats everywhere. You plan for disasters. You never completely relax. Is that bad? Asked one professor. I don't know yet, Velmoth admitted. But it's irreversible. These students will graduate and return to their homeworlds. They'll take human thinking with them. They'll teach it to others. It will spread. In the observation gallery, which had been repurposed as a study area, students from different worlds worked together on projects. Human and non-human, learning from each other. The glass barrier that once separated species was now just a window. People moved freely between observation and participation. The alarm started at 0347 station time, a sound that no one at the academy had heard before. The evacuation alert. The sound that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. Yuna woke instantly, her heart already racing. Years of living in space stations had trained her to wake at emergency sounds. She pulled on clothes and ran into the corridor. Other students were emerging, confused and frightened. Different species making different sounds of alarm. What's happening? Someone asked Dodd. The answer came over the station-wide communication system. Velmoth's voice, usually so calm, now sharp with urgency. All students and faculty proceed to emergency assembly areas immediately. This is not a drill. We have experienced a cascade failure in the station's primary systems. Life support is failing. Repeat, this is not a drill. The corridors filled with panic. 247 beings from 17 different species, all trying to move at once. Some species moved slowly by nature. Others panicked and froze. The orderly evacuation procedures they had practiced fell apart under real stress. Yuna fought her way through the crowd, looking for Taiho for the other humans. She found them near the main assembly area. Diane, Hana, Jinwoo, and Taiho. They stood together in a small cluster of calm in the middle of chaos. What do we know? Diane asked when Yuna reached them. No panic in his voice. Just the same tactical assessment tone he used for everything. Not much. Cascade failure. Life support failing. That's all they've told us. Taiho was checking his handheld device, pulling up station schematics. Multiple system failures. Primary oxygen generation is offline. Backup power is unstable. Hull integrity is compromised in sections 4 and 7. The automated repair systems aren't responding. Rescue? Hannah asked. Nearest ship is 6 hours away, Una said. She had checked that immediately. It was the first thing you learned living in space. Always know where help was and how long it would take to arrive. Jinwoo was looking at the assembled students. How long can everyone survive with current air? Taiho did rapid calculations. With this many people breathing, at current oxygen levels, maybe 8 hours. But some species need different atmospheric mixes. The Velthians need higher nitrogen. The Chlorics need trace gases. When the life support fails completely, we lose the customized atmospheric zones. Some species will die within hours. So we have less time than rescue needs, Doyen said. It wasn't a question. He was just stating facts, already moving to the next step. We need to extend the timeline or reduce the oxygen consumption. Volmoth's crystalline form floated to the center of the assembly area. The director's light was dim, flickering. Students, faculty, I must be honest with you. The Concordance rescue protocols estimate 73% casualties before help arrives. Our models show that species with the most specialized survival traits will last longest. Those with narrower environmental requirements will begin experiencing fatal stress first. Someone in the crowd made a wailing sound. Others joined in. Fear rippled through the assembly like a wave. Humans, Velmoth continued, according to our biological models, will be among the first to die. Your narrow oxygen requirements and lack of redundant systems mean you have perhaps 4 hours. Una felt cold. 4 hours. She looked at the other humans. Taiho's jaw was tight. Hannah's hands were clenched. Jinwoo was very still. And Doyan. Doyan was looking at the crowd of panicking students with an expression Una had seen before. In the biodome. When the challenges started. It was the expression of someone who had just decided that the test had begun. Director Velmoth, Dayan said, his voice cutting through the panic. Not loud, not shouting, but clear and certain. I need access to station schematics, damage reports, and current life support data. Human Doyam, I appreciate your concern, but now, please. Still polite. Still calm. But with an edge of command that made even Velmoth pause. The director transmitted the data. Diane pulled it up on a large display screen, and the other humans gathered around it. They worked in silence for 90 seconds, scanning information, cross-referencing systems, identifying problems. Then Doyen turned to face the crowd. Everyone listen. We can survive this. But you need to follow instructions exactly. You're going to die first, someone shouted. Why should we listen to you? Because I survived worse, Diane said simply. And because your way isn't working. Look around. You're panicking, wasting oxygen, making things worse. So either calm down and work with us, or accept the Council's 73% casualty estimate. The crowd fell silent. Not because they trusted him, but because they had no better option. Hannah, triage, Doyen said. She nodded and stepped forward. We need to divide everyone by oxygen consumption rates and specialized atmospheric needs. High consumption species go to the sealed sections where we can maintain higher concentrations. Low consumption species distribute to areas with lower oxygen. Anyone who can survive in non-standard atmospheres goes to zones we can isolate and preserve for them. That's segregation, a professor protested. The Concordance doesn't. The Concordance is dying, Hana interrupted. We're doing triage. Maximizing survival by managing resources. Jinwoo, medical assessment. Jinwoo was already moving through the crowd with his medical scanner. Anyone with respiratory issues, chronic conditions, or high stress responses needs to be identified now. We'll put you in the most stable zones and monitor you constantly. Don't hide symptoms. Pride will kill you. Taihao Yuna Engineering Assessment, Doyen continued. Find anyone with mechanical skills, programming knowledge, or systems experience. We need to try to restore some functions. The automated systems failed, Velmont said. Our best technicians have tried. Then we'll do it manually, Doyen said. Humans are very good at manual solutions. Within 15 minutes, the chaos had transformed into organized activity. Students were divided into groups based on survival needs. The engineering team, led by Taiho, went to assess the damaged systems. The medical team, coordinated by Jinwoo, set up monitoring stations. Hana managed resource distribution. And Doyun stood at the center, making decisions with a speed and certainty that left no room for debate. When two students argued about group assignments, he settled it in seconds. When a professor questioned his authority, he simply said, "Then you take command," and the professor fell silent. Realizing they had no better plan, Yuna worked with Taiho in the damaged sections, wearing emergency suits, trying to bypass failed systems and restore basic functions. It was dangerous work. Hull breaches nearby, unstable power conduits. But Taiho worked with the same methodical calm Doyen showed, checking everything twice, taking no unnecessary risks, having backup plans. This is what you meant, isn't it? Yuna said as they worked to reroute power. When you said humans see threats everywhere. This is why. Yeah, Taiho said, his hands steady on the tools. On Earth, we learn young that things fail. Systems break. People die. So we prepare. We practice. We think about what we'll do when, not if. They restored partial power to one section. Small victory, but it meant 30 students could move to a more stable area. In the sealed medical zone, Jinwoo was working miracles. He had identified which students were most at risk and created a rotation system. The sickest ones got the best air. The healthiest ones took turns in lower oxygen areas to preserve resources for those who needed it most. He made it voluntary, asking for volunteers rather than demanding sacrifice. Every single healthy student stepped forward. Hannah had implemented strict rationing that seemed brutal. Water, food, even movement. She had everyone sitting still, breathing slowly, conserving energy. No waste. Every resource managed precisely. She calculated and recalculated survival times, updating the group every hour with brutal honesty about their chances. The hours crawled by. 4 hours passed. The time when humans were supposed to start dying. But none of them died. They just kept working, kept managing, kept pushing. Qorvi, the Voltraxian student Doyen had taught, organized teams to seal smaller leaks using improvised materials. He used everything Doyen had taught him, identified threats, made plans, had backups. His armor protected him in dangerous areas, and he used that advantage to protect others. 6 hours passed. Students who were predicted to survive were starting to show distress. But the ones who had learned from the humans, who had absorbed that death world thinking, stayed calm. They managed their breathing, followed the protocols, trusted the process. Rescue arrived at 7 hours 14 minutes. The Concordance emergency ship docked with the damaged station, expecting to find casualties. Mass death, trauma. Instead, they found organized survival operations. Students working in efficient teams. Medical triage running smoothly. Damaged systems jury-rigged into functionality. And 0 casualties. The rescue commander, a veteran of 17 emergency operations, stared at the scene in disbelief. How is this possible? Our models predicted. Your models were wrong. Doyen said. He looked exhausted. They all did. 7 hours of crisis management with failing life support. But alive. All of them alive. But the humans, the commander said. You should have been first to die. Your biology, our biology evolved on a planet that tries to kill us every day, Hana said quietly. This was just another day.